everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Marta. I am the Customer Success Manager at Ability, the makers of the SurveyCTO data collection platform. And thank you so much for joining us in this event of our webinar series. Today, we are here to learn more about how to use data to measure justice and support changes in the justice system. We are joined by Martin Gramatikov. He is the Director of Measuring Justice at the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law, a social enterprise devoted to user-friendly justice, focusing on preventing and resolving people's justice problems. Martin, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to lay out a few practical points. So firstly, in terms of troubleshooting, I am assuming that everyone can hear me and see my screen sharing. If not, let me know in the chat. If you notice any trouble during the webinar, you can also reach out to us in the chat and we'll try to adjust accordingly. Today, we are going to share a lot of information about the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law, as well as some other projects and even some SurveyCTO features. I put together a lot of resources, relevant resources related to the webinar, so you can learn and explore more about this subject. And I share the links with you in the chat, so feel free to explore them. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. And at the end of the webinar presentation, we'll have a couple of minutes dedicated for your questions. Martin will be able to answer to all your questions. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you an email in a couple of days with the recording, the slide deck, and the resources that I'm sharing with you in the chat. Before I hand over to Martin, I will briefly mention our Safe People and Data initiative at Ability. This initiative has been spearheaded by the team at Ability, and we would like to grow it through your participation and support. We are aiming to look beyond technology to focus on best practice for safe data collection, which can involve a mix of tools and methods. And we would love to hear from you about how you are adapting and changing your work. So if the revisions you are making to your processes fall inside the scope of the Safe People and Data initiative, and if you are keen to share, please get in touch with us. You can take a look at the homepage of the initiative on our website and write to us. Having shared that, I would love to hand over to Martin now to start the webinar presentation.
Thank you very much, Marta, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I hope you hear me well, and also I'm going to share my screen to show a little bit about what we are doing. This is what Marta and her colleagues from SurveyCTO asked, and give one or two examples how we are gathering data. I must say that I'm working with a team of amazing colleagues. Just saw one former colleague, hi Martijn, who is now working elsewhere, but we are a small team with a big aspiration to make justice work for everyone. And as you see here, there is a little metaphor. We're working to make justice user-friendly because we believe now in many contexts, in many places, justice is like this car here with two wheels, which cannot bring you far, right? And that's what we see in many justice systems. A car with two wheels or tools which are not working greatly. And our dream is to make justice working for people, for companies, and we will tell you a little bit more about how we do that. We do that through people-centered justice. This is a concept which is becoming more and more visible, more and more clear. Organizations like HiiL, which by the way stands for Hague Institute for Innovation of Law, as Marta said, but some other trailblazing organizations like OECD, the World Justice Project, the makers of the rule of law index, which is becoming more and more popular. Folks at different UN agencies are embracing this concept of people-centered justice. And basically it says that justice should be working for people. It shouldn't be only working for courts, judges, police, prosecutors, basically the institutions, but should be working for people. And for those of you who are not from this field, it will be probably surprising to hear that or actually it's not that surprising, the justice is lagging behind many other sectors in the public and also in the private domain hugely. And when you're talking about people-centered healthcare, people-centered travel, people-centered technologies, in justice, this is much, much less. Usually in the field of justice, it is about rules, about institutions, and the people, the user is rarely seen. I'll show you how we are working to change that. Our bold aspiration is to help at least 150 million people by 2030 with preventing and resolving their most pressing justice problems. We call this our mission, or big, hairy, audacious goal. We have a theory of change, something that you can see here. We say that in order to deliver justice, which is solving people's problems, you have to start from data. Actually, you have to start from knowledge. And this is what I'm going to focus on in this webinar. We need to know what are the problems of people. Just like in the healthcare, you cannot build a great healthcare system if you don't know what are the diseases that plague people, if you don't know what are the treatments that respond to these diseases. You cannot build a really responsive and effective system. So we say we need to know what are the problems of people, and I will get into that into more detail. Then we say that when you know the problems of people, you should be applying best practices. And again, we make analogy to the healthcare. When you go to your doctor or to a specialist, this doctor usually is pulling out a protocol. Doctors know very well what to do when somebody comes with a particular disease, and they don't invent it on the spot. They have protocols, what to ask for, what symptoms to look for when they identify a particular disease, what to do, etc., etc. And we say that very often in justice, the interventions are being invented again and again. So basically, the hot water is being reinvented quite a lot. The third part of our theory of change is that innovation is something lacking in the justice system, and we need game-changing innovators. It is a relatively new concept, innovation in the field of justice. Those of you who are lawyers know that innovation is not the most cherished example in the field, but we say that for many problems, new solutions are needed, and we call the most promising solutions game-changing technologies or game-changing innovations, and we do help such innovations to scale. In order to scale such innovations, we need an enabling environment. If you have a very rigid, very stubborn and closed environment, regulatory, financial, cultural environment, you cannot have really people-centered justice, you cannot have innovations. And last but not least, we are working to strengthen this people-centered justice movement. Going to the first part of what you saw in our theory of change is I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we measure justice. For us, justice is not a broad, vague concept. It is what people experience in their daily lives in terms of justice problems. So you see, it's very much bottom up. We look at what's happening in daily life rather than what problems are going to courts or police, etc. Many of you are familiar with, at least with victimology, probably some other legal or related to legal fields, and you know that relatively few of the legal problems of people go to institutions, go to courts, lawyers, etc. I'm sure if you think about yourself, many of you haven't been to a courtroom as a party of a case. Many of you hopefully haven't been to a police station. So we look at justice as people experience it in daily life, not as people show up in justice institutions, because we know there are many, many filters. So we also ask people about their own experience, personal experiences. We are not interested in hearsay, or we are not interested in broad concepts like, what do you think are the big problems of this or this country or this or that society? We're asking people, what did you personally experience in the past? We usually use a 4 years period, but in a specific period. What this is giving us is a good map of the legal problems. We usually find out what are the top problems that people encounter in their lives. We also figure out what people do to solve these problems, or what they do not do. We call these justice journeys. And these are very, this is also a very broad concept. Many people do not go immediately to court, or many actually do not go to court at all to solve their problem. Also, the ways to solve legal issues are not linear. People usually make one step, then go back, then make another step in different dimension. So we measure all these justice journeys. We do that through survey research, and that's how we come to SurveyCTO. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next slides. So now, why do we measure justice? First, it is the first step of our theory of change. But more concretely, we need to know what are the legal problems of people. Myself and my colleagues have been in many meetings with judges, with high-level police officers, and when we ask them, all right, beyond the docket that you have in front of you, beyond the cases that you're dealing, what do you think are the problems of people? And very often we hear very sincere but also striking answer like, we don't know. A judge is focused on what is coming in front of her, and is not really very aware of what are the problems in the communities. This is even more pronounced when you think about a judge in a big city. Usually such a person will not really know what's going on in the small towns, in the villages and hamlets. Second, beyond mapping out the legal problems, we want to figure out what is working in the field of justice, or what is associated with better results. Do people who go to village elders get better results compared to people who go to their friends? Or are courts performing better than informal tribunals? So all these questions, of course, through survey research, we cannot answer in a very authoritative way, but it is telling us what is working in the field of justice. And we already see, after studying the needs of people in more than 23 countries already, certain trends about what is working. We also use this data to figure out what is the supply and demand for justice innovation. And also, such sort of data for us is very important to go to policymakers, to go to professionals and say, look, you are dealing with around 5 to 10% of the justice needs of people. These usually are the most significant, most serious problems, but we're talking about millions of other issues which are outside of your scope. We're dealing with a very big blind spot for justice. And just saying these are not important issues is not enough. This is not good. And we are talking about serious issues, land problems, domestic violence problems, a lot of crimes are not reported, etc., etc. So these are all justice needs that happen outside of the official justice system. And when you have clear idea about the scope, the structure, the size of the demand, it is much easier, if easy is at all appropriate word here, to trigger justice transformation. Also, we use this data to show to others how justice can be studied. I and my colleagues, we are very proud that our practices are now followed by more and more countries, more and more international organizations. So leading by example is a big thing for us. So the survey that we do it at the national level. We always use local data collection providers, because these are the people who understand the culture, these are the people who have the network, these are the people who speak the language. So we always use a decentralized data collection mode. We never go to collect data ourselves, but we do put a lot of effort to train, to empower and equip our partners with the required knowledge and also the required infrastructure. Our sample sizes for surveys are relatively large, not huge. It's usually the sample size is hugely influenced by what we expect to be the prevalence of justice needs, like what do we expect in the overall population to be the proportion of people who say that they experience legal problems, because not everyone is encountering such an issue, and you understand well that the less the proportion, the bigger sample we need, because we need more data of people who have problems in order to understand better how these problems develop, how they evolve, etc. Our research tool is in the ODK format, which is the core of SurveyCTO. It is gives us a lot of flexibility, also a lot of economies of scale that we can relatively quickly adapt and transform from one environment to another. I will not go into a lot of detail into how we validate, how we train the interviews. I suppose most of the participants here are from qualitative and quantitative research background, so you have a lot of experience with that. What's important is that we did start it in the early 2010s with pen and pencil interviews, and quickly moved towards tablets equipped with some sort of computer-assisted surveying technology. You know very well what are the advantages and why we did move towards that. So usually our interviewers are equipped with a mobile device, a tablet or a phone, on which they are working with SurveyCTO if we can install this platform. Sometimes we have to use other systems. I will come back to this a little bit later, but there are a lot of advantages. Perhaps the biggest advantage is that data is arriving almost immediately, or at least at the moment when an interviewer can sync per device, so we can control sample. Also, there is much less need for data entry, much less risk for errors. Our data pipeline is, as I said, we start with data collection from SurveyCTO. Then the data processing and analysis is being done with Stata. This is one of the nice integrations between SurveyCTO and Stata. SurveyCTO nicely and natively produces Stata data sets which are pretty well organized, and for us this saves quite a lot of time. From there we move towards two types of deliverables. One is PDF reports, another one interactive Power BI charts, which are embedded into WordPress front-end web interface. So one example, and I will brief about that, we did study justice needs in Uganda during the COVID-19 pandemic last year, 21. Because it was difficult to get on the ground, also because of the specific design of this project, we did recruit people from two sources. One source was social media, but we knew that social media will be exposing quite a lot of biases in the sample, and the samples were non-random, unlike a regular survey approach. So in social media, we knew that in Uganda, they will be much younger, much more urban, much more educated, and probably more wealthy group of the society. And that's why we did balance this with constituencies of the one legal aid organization, which is delivering quite a lot of information sessions, mostly in rural areas. So we got in a way, they are a subsample from their participants, and in that way, we kind of get more or less a balanced sample, which in no way is, by the way, representative of the overall population, but it is coming close to it. So another deviation of our usual way of gathering data is that we did this in 2 waves. So we did ask a panel of respondents around April, June last year, and then we did re-ask them from October to January this year. So you see that there was kind of a before and after, 2 sources survey with quite a lot of challenges. One of the big challenge was that during that time, actually even at that moment, Facebook, the biggest social media in the country, is blocked. So we had to find ways around that. And in the process, we faced a couple of challenges, and also we found some interesting features in SurveyCTO. Many of you probably use them a lot, so certainly not news, but the challenges were how to connect the 2 waves. So people from wave 1 are being re-asked during now wave 2. And another challenge with online questionnaire and panel recruited from social media is how to reduce a long questionnaire, how to reduce face-to-face questionnaire for online environments where the dropout rate is pretty significant. So these two challenges had to be addressed. The feature that we used was pulling data from wave 1, which is quite easy and quite intuitive. In our case, we did pull data from wave 1, and we figure out who were the people who said, yes, I have a problem, but this problem was not resolved. So with, I don't know whether you see my mouse, but with adding relevance on the pooled data, we only re-ask people who had pending problem, whether the problem is resolved at the moment, and this worked pretty nicely. Another nice feature is the very easy way to connect the two waves through just concatenating the ID number from wave 1 and then easily using the specific URL for the survey. I forgot how exactly SurveyCTO is calling that, but it's pretty easy to send out a unique URL based on the ID from the previous data set, and then only this user is able to fill in this particular questionnaire. We did use pretty simple mail merge technology to achieve that, which was pretty much of a relief. So in my last slide here is a few reflections on the value of using SurveyCTO and in general the ODK framework. First, it is providing for a lot of standardization across the different studies. So when we do the study in one country, then adapting the tools to another country is just a fraction of the efforts. This provides a lot of economies of scale. Really difficult to say percentage-wise what will be the percent, but certainly I see something like 70, 75, 80% of reusing the efforts. Another thing is in our line of work, we see pretty fast implementation timeline because of this standardization, and for us this is very important. We do very practical, very action-oriented research, and we don't have a lot of time to test different approaches to adapt, etc. So the standardization is really giving us a lot of comfort there. Also, there are quite a lot of quality control measures. SurveyCTO in itself and ODK, they have integrated quality control mechanisms. We did build certain measures on the top of that, mostly process measures. So this is helping us a lot. The multi-language, I would say the native multi-language character ODK tool is also very important for us. Just a few who have used questionnaires in different languages know how easy and straightforward this is. And the knowledge management part is very important. It also comes around the short timelines that we have, but the fact that we always get a relatively straightforward and most often standardized outputs. I mean, the the data sets are structured, the way the data is presented at different levels, provides a lot of standardization down processing and data analysis path. So this helps us a lot. And I already mentioned the integration with Stata, which for us works very well. There is an integration with Power BI. We are exploring that. We still find it not completely ready to go directly from SurveyCTO to Power BI. We usually need to involve certain manipulation in Stata, but it's interesting to have this integration. So basically, these are some of the key value points that we get out of SurveyCTO and ODK. And here is my email. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And now, Marta, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for this insightful presentation. Let me now share my screen to you again. So thank you, Martin. Just before we go to the Q&A, if you don't know SurveyCTO, or even if you are already a user, you can also connect with us on social media for product updates and tips. And also, we would love to receive your feedback on this webinar. So make sure you see the link that I posted in the chat, and feel free to share your suggestions and comments on the webinar.